Daniel Carter sat at his small wooden table, staring at the letter in his hands. The bold government seal at the top made it clear this wasn't a prank. Congratulations, citizen. You have been selected for the Interspecies Integration Program. Your assigned partners will arrive at your residence within 24 hours. Daniel read the words again. Then once more. It still didn't make sense. Assigned partners, interspecies integration. He hadn't signed up for anything like that. He set the letter down and rubbed his temples. He was an ex-engineer, just an average guy living in a quiet town, trying to stay out of trouble. Why would the government send him something like this? A sudden knock at the door made him flinch. Already. Slowly, he walked over and opened it. Standing outside were two figures. Tall, slender, unmistakably not human. Their skin had a soft metallic sheen, shifting between pale silver and light blue as they moved. Their eyes, large and deep, glowing faintly, watched him with unsettling calm. Their faces were elegant, symmetrical, too perfect, like something crafted rather than born. The one on the left, dressed in a sleek black uniform, took a step forward. Her voice was smooth, mechanical. Daniel Carter, we are your designated partners. My name is Silara. This is Vela. Daniel didn't answer. His mind struggled to process what was happening. This isn't real. This can't be real. Vela, the one on the right, tilted her head. You appear surprised. Yeah, no kidding, Daniel muttered. He took a step back, gripping the doorframe. You mind telling me what's going on? Silara nodded as if she had expected the question. You have been chosen for a special diplomatic program. Our species, the Amphibians, have entered an agreement with your government to strengthen relations. Certain human citizens have been selected for direct integration. You are one of them. Daniel shook his head. That's nice and all, but I never agreed to this. Vela blinked. Consent was not a requirement. His breath caught in his throat. Excuse me. This program has been approved by your world leaders. Our assignment is final, Silara explained. Her tone was neutral, as if she were stating the weather. Daniel narrowed his eyes. Something about this wasn't right. I don't even know you, he said. And you expect me to just accept this? Yes. Silence stretched between them. Daniel looked past them, scanning the street. No one was there. No officials. No reporters. Just the cold evening air and these two strange alien women acting like this was normal. A small, nervous chuckle escaped his lips. All right, let's say I play along. What exactly am I supposed to do? Silara and Vela exchanged a glance. You are expected to accommodate us, interact, and engage in cohabitation. This is part of the cultural exchange, Vela said. Daniel's jaw tightened. And if I say no? Silara's eyes darkened. Refusal is not an option. A cold chill ran down his spine. This wasn't the simple program. This was something else. The letter, the sudden arrival, the way they spoke like machines rather than individuals, the way his choice didn't seem to matter. Something was very, very wrong. He exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. Think, Daniel. Think. If they were really Amphibians, an advanced alien species, why would they need humans for integration? Why not just observe from a distance? Why assign partners instead of letting people choose? He had questions, but he doubted he'd get honest answers. For now, one thing was certain. He wasn't letting them inside. Not yet. He straightened, stepping forward so they couldn't enter. Look, I appreciate the effort, but I need time to think. Maybe call your supervisors and tell them I need more information. Silara's head tilted slightly, analyzing him. You are resisting, she observed. Yeah, Daniel said flatly. I tend to do that when strangers show up at my door, telling me I don't have a choice. For the first time, a flicker of emotion passed across Vela's face. Confusion. Amusement. He wasn't sure. But Silara simply nodded. We will allow you time, she said. But know this, your participation is required. We will remain near your residence until further notice." With that, both women turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Daniel closed the door and locked it immediately. Then, without hesitation, he grabbed his phone and tried to call someone. Anyone who might know what was going on. No signal. His internet was down too. The realization sent a cold shiver through his body. They weren't just watching him. They had already cut him off. Daniel sat down, gripping the edge of the table. Whatever this program was, it wasn't about diplomacy. And if he didn't figure it out fast, he might never get the chance. Daniel Carter sat in his dimly lit living room, gripping his useless phone. No signal, no internet, no way to contact anyone. It had been nearly an hour since the two alien women, Solara and Vela, had left his doorstep, but he knew they were still out there, watching. His mind raced. Why him? Why this program? And why were they acting like his choice didn't matter? Daniel wasn't the kind of man to panic, but something about this felt wrong. Governments didn't just assign alien partners to random citizens without warning, and they definitely didn't cut off all communication unless they had something to hide. He stood up and peeked out the window. There, across the street, a sleek black vehicle. Unmarked, no driver visible. And just a few feet away from it, Solara and Vela stood silently under a street lamp. They weren't talking. They weren't moving. Just standing there, staring at his house. Daniel swallowed hard. This was no friendly visit. They were waiting for him to obey. A test of freedom. Daniel paced his living room, thinking fast. If they were watching him, could he leave? No, too risky. But maybe he could trick them. Slowly, he walked to his back door. Carefully, silently. He turned the lock. Click. Then, without a sound, he stepped outside into the night. The air was crisp, cool. The distant hum of the city was faint. No alarms, no footsteps. For a moment, Daniel thought he had done it. Maybe he wasn't completely trapped. Then, that was a mistake. Daniel spun around. Solara was standing just a few feet away. She had moved without a sound. Vela stepped forward, her glowing blue eyes locking onto his. "We advised you to comply. Why are you resisting?" Daniel clenched his fists. "Because I didn't sign up for this." Solara tilted her head slightly. "That is irrelevant. You have been chosen." Daniel exhaled sharply. "And if I keep saying no?" Vela studied him for a moment. Then she said, "We are authorized to ensure cooperation." The way she said it made his skin crawl. Ensure cooperation. That sounded a lot like force. The hidden truth. Daniel took a step back. "All right. Then tell me something. Why me? Why assign random humans to this?" Solara and Vela exchanged a glance. Then Solara said, "This is not random. You were selected based on compatibility." Daniel frowned. "Compatibility? With who? You?" Solara hesitated. Vela answered instead, "With the program. With what is required." Asterisk, asterisk. Daniel crossed his arms. "And what exactly is required?" Neither of them answered. That told him everything. They knew the truth. They just weren't allowed to tell him. And if that was the case, it meant this program was something far bigger than an exchange. Daniel exhaled slowly. "All right. Fine. Let's say I play along. What happens next?" Solara's expression softened just a little. "You allow us inside. We begin cohabitation as planned. You cooperate. There will be no complications. And if I refuse?" Solara's glowing eyes darkened slightly. "Then there will be complications." That was the moment Daniel knew he was trapped. This wasn't a request. It was a directive. He wasn't chosen. He was taken. A dangerous decision. Daniel took a deep breath. Fighting back right now was a bad idea. They were faster than him. Stronger. Probably had more authority than he did in his own home. So for now he would play along. "Fine," he said. "Come inside." Silara and Vela both nodded, stepping forward as Daniel held the door open. But the second they entered, Daniel made a silent vow. He wasn't going to be a prisoner in his own home. No matter what this program really was, he was going to find a way out, even if it meant going against whoever was really in control. Daniel Carter watched as Silara and Vela stepped inside his house. Their movements were smooth, controlled, too perfect. It was like they were programmed for this, like they had rehearsed it 1,000 times. Daniel closed the door behind them, but his mind was already racing. He had let them in, but only to learn more. He needed answers. Silara scanned the room with a neutral expression. This dwelling is functional. Vela touched the fabric of his couch, running her fingers over it. Strange texture. Absorbs warmth. Daniel crossed his arms. "Yeah, well, sorry if it's not up to intergalactic standards." Silara turned to face him. "It is acceptable." Daniel frowned. Their behavior was odd. Too calm. Too controlled. They weren't acting like people trying to form a connection. They were acting like observers. A strange routine begins. The first few hours were tense. Silara and Vela didn't eat. They didn't ask for food, nor did they show any signs of hunger. They didn't sit unless Daniel told them to. They simply stood in the middle of the room, waiting. They didn't show any emotions, no curiosity, no amusement, nothing. It was unsettling. Daniel tried asking questions. "Where are you from?" Silara answered without hesitation. "The Emphirian Dominion." "How long have you been on Earth?" Vela blinked. "Long enough to fulfill our purpose." "And that purpose is silence." That was the problem. They answered some questions, but not the important ones. Daniel knew a lie when he heard one. But this wasn't lying. This was omission. They were hiding something. A silent observer, Daniel decided to test them. He went to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water. Neither of them reacted. He turned on the TV, flipping through channels. No response. But when he picked up his phone, even though he had no signal, Silara's eyes flicked to it immediately. She didn't say anything. But she was watching. They didn't care about what he ate, what he watched, or what he did, but they cared about his communication. That meant one thing. They were monitoring him. The locked door. Later that night, Daniel excused himself to his bedroom. He needed time alone to think. "Good night," he said. "I assume you don't sleep." Vela shook her head. "We do not require sleep in the same way humans do." "Great," Daniel sighed, shutting the door. Click. He locked it. For a moment, he stood there in the dark, breathing slowly. Then, moving carefully, he took his phone and tried again. Still no signal. Frustrated, he opened his laptop and tried the Wi-Fi. Nothing. But when he went to check the settings, the network was gone. Not just disconnected, completely erased. They didn't just block him. They removed his ability to even try. Daniel's stomach tightened. This was more than just an integration program. This was control. Listening in the dark, Daniel sat on the edge of his bed, trying to think. He needed a plan. And then, he heard them. Through the thin walls, Silara and Vela were talking. He could barely hear them, but their voices were clear. Subject is aware. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. No external contact. His hands clenched into fists. Monitor closely. Adaptation required. He leaned closer, but the voices stopped. The room fell into deep silence. Then, a soft knock on his door. Daniel froze. "Daniel." It was Silara's voice. "Why are you awake?" His mind raced. They knew he was listening. He had two choices, play along or push back. Taking a deep breath, he forced his voice to sound tired. "Just thinking. Hard to sleep." A pause. Then, "Understood. Rest is essential." Footsteps. Silence. Daniel let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. They knew he was suspicious. But now, he knew they were hiding something. And he was going to find out what. Daniel Carter lay awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't sleep. Silara and Vela were outside his room, silent, but he knew they were aware of his every move. They had cut off his communication, monitored his actions, and spoke in secret about him. This wasn't about integration. This was something else. He needed answers. Slowly, he sat up, careful not to make a sound. His eyes flicked to the door, locked. But if they were truly watching him, the lock meant nothing. Think, Daniel. Think. His laptop was useless. His phone had no signal. But there was still one thing he hadn't checked. The basement. The hidden device. Daniel slipped out of bed and moved toward the door. He turned the lock slowly, carefully, making sure it didn't make a sound. Then he stepped out. The living room was dimly lit, but he saw them immediately. Silara and Vela, sitting perfectly still on the couch, their glowing eyes focused on nothing. Waiting. Watching. Daniel swallowed hard and moved as casually as possible toward the basement door. He grabbed the handle. "What are you doing, Daniel?" His heart pounded. He turned to see Silara standing just a few feet away. "Fast. Too fast. I just need something from the basement," he said, keeping his voice even. Vela stood up now, watching him carefully. "There is nothing you require in the lower level." His grip on the handle tightened. "I think I'll check for myself." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Silara took a step forward. "Daniel, you are displaying resistance." Daniel exhaled sharply. "And that's a problem, isn't it?" Silence. Then Vela spoke, her voice calm but firm. "You are not permitted to access unauthorized areas." Unauthorized. It was his house. That confirmed it. Something was hidden down there. And they didn't want him to see it. Breaking the rules. Daniel had two choices: back down or take a risk. His heart pounded, but he knew he had to act. Without hesitation, he twisted the handle and yanked the door open. The second he did, Silara lunged. She was fast, too fast for a normal person. But Daniel had expected it. He dropped low, dodging her grasp, and jumped down the stairs. Darkness swallowed him as he ran down, feet hitting the cold concrete floor. Behind him, he heard Silara and Vela following, their footsteps impossibly light and controlled. No time. Find something. Anything. Daniel reached the far wall, and his fingers brushed against something metallic. A device. He had never seen it before, but it was attached to his house's power system. Wires ran through it, connecting to a strange screen pulsing with alien symbols. Before he could react, a hand grabbed his wrist. Silara. Her grip was like iron. "You were not meant to see this," she said, her voice no longer calm. Colder now. Vela was beside her, eyes glowing brighter. "This will complicate your adjustment." Daniel's heart pounded. "What is this? What are you doing to my house?" Neither of them answered. That's when he realized something. The device wasn't just connected to the house. It was connected to him. The experiment. Silara's grip tightened slightly. "You need to comply, Daniel. This is for your own benefit." Daniel yanked his arm away. "For my benefit? You've been lying to me since the moment you arrived." Vela exhaled. "We have not lied. We have omitted information for the success of the program." Daniel stared at them. "Then tell me the truth." The two aliens exchanged a glance. Finally, Silara spoke. "You were chosen because of your genetic structure. You are part of a greater experiment." Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. "Experiment?" Vela nodded. "Human adaptability is unique. Your kind bonds faster than others. Your species is unpredictable. That is why you were selected." Daniel took a step back. "Selected for what?" Silara's expression remained blank. For interspecies synchronization, we must learn how your minds adjust to foreign influence. The words hit him like a punch. They were testing him, studying his brain. This wasn't a cultural exchange. It was a scientific experiment, and he was the test subject. Escaping the trap, Daniel's mind raced. His house wasn't his anymore. His freedom was gone. These wives weren't partners. They were observers, waiting to see how he adapted to their control. He had to escape. But how? They were stronger, faster, and had already cut off his communication. Daniel took a deep breath. He needed to be smart. For now, he had to pretend. He forced himself to relax and sighed. All right, you win. I won't resist. Silara and Vela watched him carefully. Finally, Silara nodded. Good. Compliance is the optimal path. Daniel gave them a small smile. Yeah, you're probably right. But deep inside, he was already planning. If he didn't act soon, he might never be free again. Daniel Carter forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't let Silara and Vela see his fear. He had just learned the truth. He was part of an experiment. The so-called interspecies integration program was nothing more than a controlled study, and his house was a laboratory. If he showed any more resistance, they might take more extreme measures. For now, he had to act like he accepted their control. But inside, he was already planning his escape, pretending to obey. The next morning, Daniel acted normal. He sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. Silara and Vela sat across from him, watching his every move. You seem calmer today, Silara observed. Daniel shrugged. No point in fighting something I can't change, right? Vela nodded. Adaptation is the natural course. Daniel forced a smile. Exactly. They believed him. That was his first small victory, testing the boundaries. Over the next few hours, Daniel tested how much freedom he had left. He walked around the house. They followed. He opened the fridge. They observed. He tried using his laptop. It was still blocked. Then he did something unexpected. He walked to the front door and reached for the handle. Silara spoke immediately. You cannot leave yet. Daniel turned around, acting confused. Yet? So, I can leave later. Vela hesitated. When the observation phase is complete. That meant one thing. He wasn't a prisoner forever. They expected him to fully adapt first. But he had no intention of waiting that long. Finding a weakness. That night, while pretending to sleep, Daniel listened. Silara and Vela spoke in hushed voices outside his room. Progressing well. He is adjusting. Brain patterns show increasing synchronization. Full compliance expected soon. Daniel's heart pounded. They were tracking his mind. If he let them keep controlling him, he would lose himself. He had to escape. Tonight. The breakout. Daniel waited until the house was completely silent. Then slowly he got out of bed. He needed a way out. The front door was guarded. The windows might have security measures. But the basement, that device he found, it was connected to everything. If he could shut it down, maybe he could disable their control. He had to try. The basement gamble. Step by step, Daniel moved silently through the dark house. He reached the basement door. It wasn't locked. Carefully, he slipped inside and made his way down the stairs. The strange alien device was still there, glowing faintly in the dark. Daniel stepped closer, studying the wires. Which one should he pull? What if he made it worse? Before he could decide, Daniel. His heart nearly stopped. He turned around. Silara and Vela stood at the top of the stairs, watching. A dangerous choice. Daniel took a deep breath. He couldn't stop now. He grabbed the thickest wire and yanked it free. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a sharp, high-pitched sound filled the room. Silara and Vela staggered back, their glowing eyes flickering. Daniel saw his chance. He ran, pushing past them, He sprinted up the stairs. Alarms blared through the house. Something was failing. He didn't stop. He reached the front door and grabbed the handle. And this time, it opened. Freedom. For now. Daniel ran into the cold night air. The black vehicle was still parked across the street, but no one was inside. No security. No backup. It was just him and the open road. He didn't know where he was going. But one thing was clear. He had escaped. For now. But he knew this wasn't over. Silara and Vela would come for him. And next time, he had to be ready. Daniel Carter sprinted down the empty street, his breath coming in short gasps. He was free. But for how long? Behind him, his house stood in eerie silence. The alarms had stopped. The lights had dimmed, and the two alien women, Silara and Vela, were nowhere in sight. Were they down? Or were they watching, waiting? Daniel didn't take any chances. He kept running. The cold night air stung his face, but he didn't slow down. He needed distance. He needed a plan. Most of all, he needed to survive. A world that doesn't know. Daniel reached the edge of town, stopping near an old gas station. It was empty. No customers, no workers, just the flickering neon sign buzzing overhead. He caught his breath, leaning against the wall. His mind raced. Who could he call? Where could he go? The government was part of this. Going to the police was useless. His friends, they'd never believe him. And his phone, still useless. No signal. He was completely alone. For the first time, fear crept in. Was there even a way out of this? A dangerous shadow. Daniel turned, scanning the empty street. No sign of pursuit. But something didn't feel right. The air was too still. The town was too quiet. Then, a shadow moved across the road. His heart stopped. At first, it looked like just a person walking, but then he noticed the way it moved. Too smooth, too controlled. Silara. She wasn't running. She wasn't chasing. She was walking calmly toward him, like she knew he had nowhere to go. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. He wasn't going back. The chase begins. Daniel turned and ran. This time, he didn't hold back. He sprinted full speed, taking sharp turns through the dark alleys, moving as fast as his legs could carry him. Behind him, Silara never ran. She only walked. But no matter how far he went, she never fell behind. It was impossible. She was keeping up without effort. Daniel's chest burned, but he forced himself to keep moving. He had to find a hiding place. Then, he saw it, an abandoned factory just ahead. Without thinking, he ran inside. Hiding in the dark, Daniel slipped through the rusted door and pressed himself against the cold metal. The factory was massive. Old machines, broken windows, a high ceiling that let in bits of moonlight. He moved carefully, stepping between scattered tools and debris. He had to stay quiet. Then he heard it. Soft footsteps. Silara was inside. She wasn't in a hurry. She was searching. Daniel crouched behind an old control panel, holding his breath. The footsteps grew closer. Closer. Then they stopped. Silence. Daniel's heart pounded. Had she found him? Seconds stretched into minutes. Then her voice. Daniel. He closed his eyes. She was standing just a few feet away. She knew. The unexpected offer. Silara didn't move closer. She simply spoke. You don't have to run. Daniel said nothing. You have already proven something important, she continued. You resisted longer than most. Most? Daniel's mind sharpened. There were others. Your survival instinct is stronger than expected, Silara continued. That is why you were chosen. Daniel finally spoke, his voice cold. Chosen for what? Silara hesitated. Then, to help us evolve. Daniel's breath caught. What are you talking about? We are not fully independent, Silara admitted. We were designed for observation. We obey orders. But you. She stepped forward. You do not. Daniel felt a chill. That is why we need you, she said softly. Not as a subject, but as a guide. A choice to make. Daniel's mind raced. Was this another trick? Another way to control him? Or was Solara telling the truth? You expect me to believe that? He asked. Solara tilted her head. You know it already. Daniel swallowed. She was right. He had seen it. The way she hesitated. The way she questioned orders. Maybe, just maybe, she wanted freedom too. For the first time, Daniel had an advantage, and he was going to use it. Daniel Carter stood frozen in the abandoned factory, staring at Solara. She had chased him, cornered him, and now she was offering him a choice. You don't have to run anymore, she said. You can help us. Her voice was calm, almost pleading, not like a machine, like someone trying to break free. Daniel's heart pounded. Could he trust her? Everything inside him screamed no. She had monitored him, blocked his communication, and called him a test subject. But something in her eyes was different now. For the first time, she looked uncertain. And that meant one thing. She wasn't fully under their control. The hidden truth. Daniel clenched his fists. Tell me everything. Solara hesitated, then nodded. We were created for a purpose, she admitted. To observe, to learn, and to obey. Daniel swallowed hard. Created, not born. We are not like you, Solara continued. We have thoughts, but no true choice. Until now. Daniel frowned. Why now? Solara's glowing eyes flickered. Because of you. He stiffened. You resisted. You broke the system. No human has done that before, she explained. And because of that, we are changing. Daniel's mind reeled. The experiment wasn't just about him adapting. It was about them, too. They weren't controlling him. He was changing them. A desperate offer. Vela's voice cut through the darkness. Daniel. He turned. She was standing near the entrance, watching. Unlike Solara, her expression was unreadable. You do not need to run. The others will not stop you now, she said. But you must decide. Daniel felt a chill. Others. There were more like Solara and Vela. More watchers. Vela stepped forward. If you leave, the program will continue. Another will be chosen. The cycle will not stop. Daniel's stomach twisted. It wasn't just about him anymore. If he ran, someone else would take his place. Another person would wake up trapped, monitored, studied. But if he stayed, maybe he could end it. The breaking point. Daniel took a slow breath. He had one chance. He met Solara's gaze. Can you fight them? She hesitated. Then, for the first time, she nodded. Daniel's jaw tightened. That was all he needed to hear. Then let's end this. Turning the tables. Daniel's mind worked fast. If Solara and Vela were changing, then maybe others could change too. Asterisk asterisk, the control device at his house. Asterisk asterisk, it wasn't just monitoring him. It was controlling them. If they could shut it down, the program would collapse. Solara and Vela exchanged a glance. Then Vela spoke. There is risk. Daniel smirked. Yeah. Welcome to being human. The final stand. They returned to Daniel's house before dawn. The moment they stepped inside, the house felt different. Still. Cold. The control device in the basement hummed softly. It was waiting for him. Solara moved first, her fingers grazing the screen. The alien symbols shifted as she accessed the system. It is linked to us, she murmured. If we disable it, we become unknown. Free. Daniel's breath caught. They had never been free before. He met her gaze. Then do it. Solara hesitated. She was afraid. Vela spoke softly. It is time. Solara took a deep breath and pressed the final command. The collapse of control. The change was instant. The device sparked, the lights flickered, And then, everything shut down. Daniel held his breath. Solara and Vela staggered back, their glowing eyes flickering wildly. For a moment, he thought they would fall. But then, they stabilized. And when Solara looked at him again, her expression was different. No more calculation. No more control. Just clarity. It is over. A new beginning. Daniel stepped outside and took a deep breath of the morning air. The world was waking up. Normal. Unchanged. No one knew what had just happened. But he did. He turned to Solara and Vela. What happens now? Solara's lips curled into the smallest smile. Now, we choose. Daniel exhaled, a small grin forming. Good. For the first time, he wasn't trapped. He wasn't running. He was free. And now, so were they.